What's the most disturbing secret you've discovered about someone close to you? My great-grandmother was married to 3 different people at the same time. The men were from different branches of the military. She was collecting all 3 of their paychecks at a time. One night as a kid I heard my parents having an explosive argument in their bedroom which suddenly went quiet. The door was closed and locked. I found out during a drunk phone call from my mother it was because she attempted to shoot my father in the face with a .303 but it didn't go off when she pulled the trigger as there were no bullets. They were both horrified and just stared at each other apparently. They're still together. Discovered that my sister stole my father's $25 Rolex not more than 24 hours after he died. I only discovered it when her and her husband made a frivolous purchase and I wondered where they got the money since they were always broke and begging my parents for money. I got suspicious. It hit me that she might have stolen and sold the Rolex. Had the paperwork, ran a track on the sales history and discovered it had been sold to a pawn shop down the street from where my sister lives. Went to the AWN shop and after a bit of persuasion got them to tell me who sold it to them and it was my sister. Me and my mom disowned her. Just found out the other day that it wasn't my neighbor's dad who senselessly shot and killed my dog. It was his son, who I was close friends with. He did it on purpose. He knew how much that dog meant to me too. I also found out the other day where he lives. He's a meth head now, so I'll just let nature or the police do their thing. My former wife, now ex, and I were having problems. I was certain she was cheating on me. I found her notes where she was figuring out and had added UPHOW much I was worth dead. My coworker lets her dog hump her leg every morning till he releases, while she has her coffee which has stayed with me since I heard it. I can't think of anything else when they talk to me. My mom received birthday cards with money in them 4 years from her parents. She kept the cards with the money in them, saving to buy a piano, sentimental reasons. My sister, who has repeated LYs stolen from family members, found the collection of cards, money and took them. My mom only wanted the cards back when she realized what happened. My sister denied everything. UCKU, Emily. Graduated boot camp and wondered why my brother wouldn't talk to me. Turns out he was ucking my ex while I was there instead of delivering my letters. Guess guilt ate him up and he thought it was simpler to keep up the lie and not have a brother. Right up until an old friend from my hometown told me what happened. Found out after his death that my great-uncle was a grand wizard in the KKK. Opened a chest in Hosadic with photos from rallies, lynchings, and cross-burnings all around some rural part of Alabama. We were actually horrified by the discovery and suddenly realized why he was SO negative towards his black hospice nurse who was otherwise kind-hearted and caring with him in the family. Edit. Since a very large number of you want to keep calling me racist, telling me how much of a up I was for burning everything. We, as in my family, I was 16 at the time and had no real say in what the adults, elders decided. We decided to burn all of it out of intense shame for what we discovered. We held prayer vigils through our local church for the people affected by his hatred. Had I been older, I might have taken some of the more damning photos and forwarded them to people who could have brought closure to victims. I made this post at great risk to remaining in my family as they would still see this as romanticizing his actions. To my family, simply speaking, his name is done so at great risk to your standing on wills, remaining part of the family. So yes, I do feel like it's too late because the only thing I have is that my uncle was a member of the KKK for an unknown amount of time before 1950. My family has prided itself in being very inclusive towards other races, ethnic backgrounds. My 7th generation great-grandfather was a member of the Underground Railroad. Several of my other great-aunts and uncles were vocal figureheads of the civil rights movement. They acted as anyone with that much history behind them would in a moment of shock. They destroyed. Blame them if you wish, but please stop blaming me. I didn't make any decisions, and for me it's too late to report anything because I don't have any useful information on something that happened a very long time ago for me. I do sincerely apologize to anyone who sees their chances for closure going up in flames, but I can assure you that for how many other Klansmen I saw in those photos, surely some of their families have already submitted evidence after their passing. My uncle has literally been deleted from our family history, even in such detail as to remove his gravestone so that people cannot leave flowers for him. My grandfather beat someone to death. My dad was an only child, but my grandmother was once pregnant with my dad's younger brother. When she was 6 months pregnant, someone in construction equipment ran over the car she was driving and she lost the baby. While she was in the hospital, my grandfather found the guy and beat him to death. From what I Understand, he was in jail for about a week before he was released. Apparently, he claimed temporary insanity due to the circumstances. I learned all this about 4 years ago when my brother was researching family history and asked my grandfather about it. I've always seen him as a nice, little old man. I was pretty close with my youngest uncle growing up, at least in pictures. He was in his mid-20s when I was like 5 for context. One day when I was in middle school, he just stopped coming around completely. My entire family told us kids that he was backpacking around the nation. In high school, I was going a genealogy project on my grandfather, his dad, and accidentally found my uncle's name on the ex-offender registry. Come to find out, he was running a CP ring and had served 16 years in federal prison. He's out now and my family pretends nothing happened. I stay far away. In high school, one of my best friend's date raped his girlfriend, then dumped her. The next day at school, the girl was crying, asking her friends what she did wrong. She did nothing wrong. The guy had been my friend and I never spoke to him again. My brother was stealing money from father who had dementia. This went on for a year, and I found out about it was because the bank who had my father's mortgage called me wondering why it hadn't been paid in 6 months. My father's bank account went into the negative around this time too, and when I confronted my brother about it, he said, "Well, I gotta pay my bills." I was about to take control of all the accounts and make sure shit got back on track, but my father ended up in the hospital and died shortly after that. My brother also stole some of my inheritance too. In the end, he stole over $5,000 from his dying father. So my grandmother, who's been estranged from my family for a long time now for a multitude of reasons, has this weird thing where she has to share food with people. Are you ordering steak at the restaurant? Well, oh boy, she's got to order the same thing even if she doesn't like steak. Try her drink, it's really good. Take the first bite of chicken to let her know if it's any good. This always really annoyed me cause I hate sharing food. One day I brought it up to my mom and she was like, "Oh yeah, grandma is afraid of being poisoned, so she wants other people to try it first." So let me get this straight. Grandma thinks someone is tryingtoposion her, so she has me try the food first, and it makes so much sense looking back because she literally would not take a bite of anything she ordered until someone else had a bite first. Thanks, Grandma. Found a scrapbook of my mom and a guy the first didn't recognize from her immediately post-college days. Turns out he was a long-term boyfriend of hers who killed himself when she broke up with him. My grandfather found his body. I learned at age 20, by finding the book Shrine to him. I just found out my aunt and uncle slept together a few years ago. And somehow my dad is the bad guy for cutting them both off. Tears of Joy edit. For context, they were brother and sister, not a non-blood related married couple. After my husband died in 2020, I found out he had been having an affair with a 30-year-old. He was 55. She apparently aborted his baby. Everything had told me about his prior life was a lie. Second marriage for both of us, and he had been having sex with men since he was in his early 20s. To some ITUP, I didn't know this man at all. We had been together 10 years and married for 6. I said something in general about horses one time. My good friend just kinda shrugged and said, "Huh, my uncle got ucked to death by a horse. What the hell?" Turns out my friend's uncle was Mr. Hands, guy from the Seattle area. My friend was like, "Oh yeah, there's a whole movie about it and everything. It's called Zoo. Some town called Enumclaw, Washington is where this happened." I did look it up to see what he was talking about, since he just blindsided me with the whole story. I don't really know why someone would claim such a thing if it weren't true, but perhaps he just wanted to shock me. We don't really communicate anymore, due to changing jobs. When my grandfather passed away, we discovered they did not exist. His name was not in any government registry. He was a normal citizen, paid taxes, had a license and everything. Lived a long life, married to my grandmother for over 50 years, had multiple children, everything normal. And #X200B. Still to now, no one knows who he really was and why he had a false name. My best friend confessed to me that he has a child as a result of a long-distance affair in another country. He has 3 kids in the US and is in a toxic marriage. His wife doesn't know. Found a folder of Orn on my best friend's computer in high school. All bestiality. About the biggest secret that I know about somebody that they don't know I know. He shot his friend in the foot on purpose. They were teens and playing with a gun while drunk, stupid I know. And he accidentally shot his friend in the foot. Except it wasn't an accident. He admitted to it being on purpose later. Edit. No, this isn't the event that happened in your small American town and we don't know each other. I'm not even an American and guns are like super illegal here. I have no idea how he acquired it. Heck, it'd probably go to jail just on the merit of that alone. And from us Europeans, are you guys okay? This isn't a normal thing and you guys shouldn't relate to it. When I was 17, I dated someone who told me when he was drunk that not only would he probably hit me one day, and just wanted me to be prepared, but he also used to rape his little brother. Every now and then I remember that moment and it just floors me how dangerous that kid was. I wasn't close to this person, but I did hang out with them a few times. The best man at my wedding had another really close friend who turned out to be a serial killer. It messed him up really badly. He already had mental health issues and this sent them over the edge. I can't even talk to him anymore. I miss you, man. Ex-roommate and good friend got kicked out for not paying rent. A couple months later, a girl goes missing after her shift at Wendy's and turns up murdered. Guy confesses while on mushrooms to police and is released due to his condition when admitting it. Ran into him a couple weeks after Andy could tell something was up. Turned himself in. Sober the next day. I used to go to work, leaving my girlfriend at the house with him. You think you know someone. Looking back 15 years later, and it all adds up. A work colleague appeared on the front page of a national newspaper for a life of fraudulent qualifications. He claimed medical and law degrees, was a brigadier in the Army, Reserves, and was the CEO for a major Heath fund. He actually was a brigadier in the Army Reserves, but that and the Heath fund role were largely built on the fraudulent qualifications and a progression of jobs also based on this claims. In reality, the only qualification he actually held was as a mortuary assistant. Not even his wife knew. The fraudulent degrees had been gained when he was in the Army Reserves recruiting and he had access to submitted position applications. He came undone when he applied for a government job and some flags were raised by the recruitment people. He tried to withdraw the application but didn't realize that an application for a government role has the same weight as a statutory declaration and cannot be withdrawn. It all went south very quickly and he ended up doing jail time. My former best friend cheated on his wife multiple times. I found out because he triagetting me to cheat on my wife, who he was the best man at for our wedding. Completely ucked. One of my favorite teachers in high school turned out to be a pedophile who had been raping the same boy for 5 years. My mom paid the guy who shot the bullet at my wife, then GF at time, when we were 18. My mother got very drunk one day and confessed home that my father raped her and that's how she became pregnant with me. He was not that close, but he was a friend and our veterinarian, until he lost his license for doing all the ketamine that was supposed to be for the animals. My ex-friend dated a guy who was raped as a kid by his neighbor who was an elderly woman. The friend didn't react or comfort him when he told the story. She shrugged it off and started complaining about random stuff. I was really shocked tbh. That my late grandfather may or may not have shaken his baby to death. A baby that would be my uncle. As a woman, all my girlfriend's rape stories. Just after my 6th anniversary, I found a video on my husband's tablet from a hidden camera that showed my 14-year-old niece nude. I called the police immediately. He never came home again. He's in prison now. In one moment I realized I had no clue who I was married and had a child with. And I yeeted his SS into the sun added a missing word. Met a super nice guy at a networking event when I just starting out in tech. He had a ton of connections and was a nice family man. Super rich. Eventually we became friends and he was acting as a mentor figure to me in the industry. Went over to his massive new house, met his family, etc. He had the demeanor and looked like Al Borland from Home Improvement. To give you an idea, like 4 years later I was looking at the ex-offender registry map for my local area while I was shopping for houses. Lo and behold, his house popped up. In the early 2000s he was convicted of running a commercial child porn sales site. Served 5 years for it in federal prison.